Alright, so today we're going to compare Edelbrock carburetors against Holley carburetors and just some of the ease of tunability and usability of both of these units compared against each other. And these units are for your mild builds. Get in, drive it around town, get in, take it to the drag strip. This is what most of us have sitting on the top of our engines. So anyway, without further ado, we're going to dive deeper into these carburetors, go through them system by system, from curb idle adjustment all the way up to jets, and just compare the two of them outright against each other. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now, for the duration of this video, we're going to go ahead and use the Summit carburetor as our Holley carburetor. Now, the Summit carburetor is produced by Holley. Notice the linkage is all exactly the same. The only difference being between the Summit and the Holley carburetor is it does not have side hung float bowls, versus the top of this carburetor here opens up. And the Summit carburetor runs annular boosters, where your Holley carburetor runs your standard straight leg boosters, and your accelerator pump works the same, but the parts to change your accelerator pump nozzle on the Summit are different than the Holley, your standard Holley. But again, Holley produces both of these carburetors. They make this for Summit. Everything else is the same, so we're going to go ahead and use it as our example here today. So again, exactly the same carburetor, just some slight variances. But as far as tuning goes, the parts and pieces that we're going to compare are exactly the same, and can easily be compared against the Edelbrock carburetor. So just comparing the basics of the two carburetors, they both come in at about the same price range. This Summit is about, it's just a little under $300, and your standard Street Avenger Holley carburetor also likewise is in the $300 to $350 range, same as the Edelbrock. So those things are the same across the board. You're pretty much paying the same amount of money for the product. They both come with electric chokes most often. Sometimes you do have an option, but the Summits come stock with an electric choke, as do the Edelbrocks. Now this one in particular, it's removed, but it works just as the same unit. So those two items comparatively are exactly the same. Also, comparing the curb idle circuits on both the Holley and the Edelbrock style carburetor, they're pretty much exactly the same. Same idea with the mixture screws as with the Holley, same idea with the curb idle screw, and they're both run on a circuit with transfer slots. So adjustability, they're pretty much exactly the same. Real simple, easy to understand. They all run the same vacuum ports, where you have ported vacuum, manifold vacuum, and then for a brake booster port, and they all have another port out back. Same with the Holley, same with the Summit. You have your vacuum ports, and then you have your port out back. So again, pretty much the same across the line on the idle circuits. Ease of adjustability, exactly the same, and usability, exactly the same. Alright, now from this point on, things get pretty different. Now on the Edelbrock carburetor, it uses a plunger style accelerator pump, where it has 3 different holes for your accelerator pump lever. So pretty easy to adjust and straightforward. Likewise, the Holley has multiple positions for, and they coincide to your idle settings, but they get a little bit more advanced, where you have pump cam, which you can change out, and you have some adjustment here on your lever arm, and it uses a diaphragm style accelerator pump. Now, ease of usability, the Edelbrock is obviously a lot more simple, and on a stock engine, that's really all you need. Now the Holley takes a little bit more know-how and understanding, but it accounts for a much more broad range of what you could encounter with engine combinations and what you might need. Now, relating to the accelerator pump circuit there, one thing that's nice about both carburetors is they do have an adjustable accelerator pump nozzle. Now again, this is what's different about the Summit. You got to change some jets, but the Holley there, you're dealing with the same thing. You have a nozzle that you can change, so you can change sizes, which alters your duration of your pump shot. So some nice stuff there. So again, altering your duration, you can either have it all at once, or you can have it spread over a longer range. And again, you have that with both style of carburetors. So that's definitely a positive on the Edelbrock and the Holley style carburetors. Alright, so getting into the guts of these carburetors here. The next thing I want to go into is kind of the power valve on the Holley and the springs and needles on your Edelbrock. They pretty much perform the same function, and what they do, and I'll explain it through way of the Holley. So kind of how it works is you have a smaller jetting size on your primary than your secondary, and that's because while you're cruising, you are only on the primary side of the carburetor, and you don't need all of the fuel that you would on the secondary at wide open throttle full load. You're at very low load. So you have what's called a power valve here on the Holley that when you reach a certain vacuum, it'll pull this in and it'll add additional fuel, and ideally it'll bring you somewhere to the air-fuel ratio that you would have set up on the back end. So if you were to pull this out, you'd have to jet up, and then your secondaries and your primaries would be jetted the same. So anyway, it kind of helps you go from cruising to power on your primary side, and it allows you to cruise with a fairly economic air-fuel ratio. Now, the Edelbrock does it similar, but they do have a heightened level of adjustability, which I do appreciate. So they have metering rods and springs, and the springs perform the same function as the power valve. As when they see a certain manifold vacuum, they will pull the metering rod out and thus make the jet larger essentially, and it'll flow more fuel. It's kind of related to a motorcycle carburetor. So just to get an idea, we have the jet down there, and we kind of see where the metering rod, get this kind of set back on here, where it goes into the Edelbrock carburetor. What's also nice about the Edelbrock is this is very easy to tune and adjust. You loosen this, pop this cover out or off to the side, and this comes up and out, and it's very simple. Now the Holley is difficult, especially on the standard Holley style. It's a little bit better on the Summit, but the standard Holley, I got to pull this block off, this metering block, and a lot of people have a tendency to crack them and ruin gaskets, and it's just expensive if you mess it up. So that's something I don't necessarily like about the Holley, and they do come in more adjustable metering block styles, but that's an added cost, and we're comparing straight across the base models. Same with the Summit. It's a little better, but it's located where my thumb is here on the bottom. Again, you still have to remove the carburetor entirely to be able to change this. So Holley generally tells you to select a power valve by taking your idle manifold vacuum and dividing it by half, and then you want to run that number. So I have a 6.5 in this carburetor here, and generally that's pretty accurate, but if you do have to go and change them, they are a pain, where again the Edelbrock is easier. So that's definitely something to consider. Now that we've taken a shot at the Holley, I'm going to have to go ahead and take a shot at the Edelbrock carburetor. So something that I really find unsatisfactory about them is their archaic float adjustment. So you literally have to bend the tang to set your float height, and I've made a YouTube video in the past of how to actually do this, where you slide a drill bit in and you're supposed to set it to a certain height. But one thing to consider is as you change your fuel pressure, it will actually affect your fuel height in your float bowl. So without being able to adjust this easily, where you have to pull the whole top of the carburetor off, that's kind of a pain. Another issue with this is unlike the Holley style carburetor where you have the sight plug, again the Summit has a really nice glass sight plug, but grab the float bowl off the Holley here. The Holley carburetor again has a sight plug where it's very easy to adjust this, and if you have different fuel pressure, you can adjust your float accordingly, and you can get away with a lot broader range and higher pressures on the Holley carburetor design and have it dialed in better. Again, that float level is important because it's designed to be at a certain level. And if you have it too high, your jets will come too early in the RPM and it'll be rich and it'll be impossible to tune right. And likewise, if it's too low, your jets will come in too late and you'll have a lean spot in your jetting, and you don't want either of those situations. And with your Edelbrock carburetor, it's very easy to get into those situations. But again, we can see in comparison with the Holley and the Holley style carburetor, the float adjustment is very simple. You just simply, you want to break this screw loose, pop this nut up, and then you can easily adjust your float height accordingly. It makes getting your float height correct on the Holley carburetor extremely simple, where you just kind of got to trust that you have it set right, and you better have your fuel pressure set right on your Edelbrock carburetor, or else you could have issues there for sure. Another thing that really irks me about the Edelbrock carburetors in particular is the functionality of the vacuum secondary. And if you have a mechanical secondary double pumper carburetor, or you just like running those, you can ignore this, but I definitely recommend for anyone running around on the street, a vacuum secondary carburetor does very well, especially if you're not super into tuning and you're kind of a set it and go type of guy. So anyway, the Holley style uses a little diaphragm in here with a spring, and judging by the size of the spring that you put in, it'll determine what vacuum draw on the carburetor it takes to open up your secondaries. So it kind of adjusts the rate, how fast they'll open, and what your engine can handle. So obviously if you have high load, tall gears, kind of a low power to weight ratio, you want that to open slower because your engine couldn't handle the abrupt incoming fuel and air mixture without obviously an accelerator pump circuit. Likewise, if you have high power to weight ratio, like a drag car or something, you're going to run a pretty light spring and it'll open that secondary really quick. And again, it's kind of, as with the Edelbrock over here, it's kind of contained where you have to have wide open throttle for this to begin to open, or at least some significant throttle before this secondary can open at all. Now, getting on to the Edelbrock carburetor here, my biggest beef with them is this little flap here, and it is somewhat adjustable, but Edelbrock actually recommends that you do not mess with it. You set it to factory setting and you leave it be. They do not want you messing with that, and from my experience, it's just hard to get it to run right if you do. So it kind of is what it is as far as that goes, and if you're going to stick with Edelbrock carburetors and you have, again, relatively performance engine, street strip style car, you're going to get into issues where you're leaving a little bit of top end performance on the table because of that. So again, the Holley is a lot more adjustable in that sense, where the Edelbrock is simple, but again, if you know what you're doing with the Holley style carburetor, it's a tremendous advantage. And finally here, I'm going to talk about float bowl actual design. What I really like about the Edelbrock here is it's spaced out and not over the front and back of the engine where it really accumulates a lot of heat. So it kind of protects against that, and that's good. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, you have the Holley carburetor where the float bowl kind of hangs over the intake manifold, and the ambient temperature that radiates up can get it pretty hot, and it can start to boil your fuel and have percolation issues. Now, you can fix a lot of this by running carburetor spacers, but again, pound for pound, the Edelbrock design is a lot more forgiving with that stuff. Something else here is that the Edelbrock has a one port inlet, so that makes plumbing really simple, where the Holley usually you have to have a fuel rail, and I don't have one sitting here, but you can imagine the fuel rail comes up, comes here, has a port, and you plug into that. But that's an added cost that you're going to have. So some things to consider there. And again, most of the standard Holleys, the float bowl comes off the side, so where's all your fuel go? It dumps all over your intake manifold, where the Edelbrock style comes off the top. You don't spill any gas. It's really nice. Now, that's another reason I really like running the Summit carburetors, because when you're doing your jet tuning and you're dialing in an engine, you don't have to keep messing it up like that, and the Summit's very forgiving, just like the Edelbrock. So pound for pound, we see that the Edelbrock and the Holley carburetor are both tremendous carburetor designs. And again, that's why they've withstood the test of time, because they are as good as what they are. But you know, just some of the finer points there. There's some things I like about both of them, some things I don't like about both of them. You know, the Edelbrock, if you had a little bit more adjustability overall, it would be better. But what I do like about it is the top comes off so you don't spill any fuel all over when you're tuning, and you can adjust that power valve circuit, which is the springs and needles on the Edelbrock, much better, where the Holley is that power valve design, which you know, leaves a little something to be desired there, in my opinion. But again, likewise, the Holley has improved accelerator pump stuff. You can set your float height much better. There's just a higher level of adjustability with, you know, your vacuum secondary even. If you could combine the two carburetors and make one, it would be a tremendous carburetor. And again, that's kind of why I myself run these Summit carburetors. And they're just nice with the glass sight plug, and the top comes off so you don't spill fuel all over your engine when you're tuning. They're a very, very good entry-level carburetor, and they run for under $300. They come with a fuel rail, and they're just really good. I wish I was getting paid to say this, but I'm not, unfortunately. So tremendous carburetor there. But that's kind of my thoughts on both the carburetors, comparing them against each other. If you have anything to add, feel free to throw those down in the comments. Please say things that are constructive, you know. Try and keep your fanboy comments to yourself. I sure have tried to. And, you know, give an honest comparison. So that's what I've tried to do here, and I hope you learned something and you enjoyed.